My Andrew is name, and I'm an Orthodox Christian paladin. And like any good paladin, I'm going to be protecting you in this video, protecting you from the virus, the mind virus that has been going around and infecting the people, infecting the masses, infecting our young men. And it's a virus that people can contract when they watch too much online Christian debates and apologetics. And so in this video, the anecdote that I'll be prescribing to you, dear viewer, in order to protect yourself from contracting this mind virus, is going to be first talking about where it all started, where it all began, what Christian online debates used to be, and what apologetics used to be. And then I'll talk about how the landscape has kind of developed and changed over the years and changed over time, and how we ended up where we are today, where you can catch this mind virus by watching too much of it. And in my last video, there was a comment where people were complaining that my profile picture was showing too much skin, showing too much chest. So I decided for this video to show y'all a little bit more. And so it all began thousands of years ago, many thousands of years ago, when I was a wee lad, when I was 16 years old. And like any true 16-year-old degenerate, what I would do is I would stay up late into the middle of the night, up until 3 a.m., up until 4 a.m. And what I would do is I would be watching online Christian debates. I've been doing this for a while now, guys, since, thousands of years ago when I was 16. And back then, these debates were super formal. They were super dry. It was typically some institutionalized journalist who worked for some big media company against some super academic with some PhD professor from some school. And they were all like 50 years old or older. And back in my day, there was a guy named Christopher Hitchens. And I used to watch debates of this Omega Reddit atheist Christopher Hitchens back when he was alive. So that's how long ago this was. That's how many thousands of years ago this occurred. And back then, a lot of people would go ahead and they would watch these with the desire to learn the truth, with the desire to learn. And, I'd watch these all the time when I was 16. And then what ended up happening is by the time I turned 17, I joined a non-denominational church. Yes, I know, cringe. And the reason why I stopped going to that non-denominational church is because the youth pastor at that church told me that I was too young to be having this girlfriend and I shouldn't have this girlfriend. And so I stopped going to the church. So clearly, since then, I've had a long way to go and I've had a lot to learn since the things that I knew when I was 16, all those thousands of years ago. And back then, in the ancient times, tribes were still something that people engaged with in person. The people that someone associated with wasn't Discord bros. It wasn't some online community. And this is crazy if you think about it. This kind of shows you the state of the depravity that we exist in now. The fact that we call, a subreddit a community, the fact that we call a comment section a community, the fact that we call some, loosely associated people who retweet each other on X a community is crazy. How do we get here? How we get here? And this is the point I'm trying to make. Back then, saying something like that, back, when I was a teenager, that would have been crazy. What do you mean community? What are you talking about community? Community is when you go outside and you leave your house and you go to church or you go do some community service or you engaged in maybe a fraternity, not a cult fraternity, a real fraternity. That's a community. What is this online community thing that we're talking about here? And what happened, the reason this occurred, the reason we have these communities now, is because back in the ancient times, the algorithms on these social media platforms, whether it's YouTube or TikTok didn't exist, but YouTube or Facebook, is you would subscribe to people. Let's take YouTube for example. You'd subscribe to people, and then when you wanted to go watch videos, you would go ahead and you would open up your phone, and you'd actually literally have to go through your subscription feed like a peasant. There was no homepage, there were no shorts to doom scroll through. It was literally the people that you've subscribed to, and that was it. And that's how people watched videos back then. But since then, the algorithms have become more and more sophisticated, more and more advanced, and better at, getting you to watch for longer and longer. And ever since then, the brain virus really started to spread and really started to infect the minds of basically the whole world, right? And it accelerated this brain rot. And I really started to notice this back when I was a bit younger. I used to be an MMORPG nerd, an MMO nerd, basically a loser, where, it's these people. I mean, I'm trolling around a little bit. A lot of people have played MMOs. They're pretty normal to play, at least back then, where you had games like World of Warcraft and RuneScape and Final Fantasy 14 and all this. And I noticed on the internet what happened was there would be these videos and there would be these forums where people would really start to strongly associate really strongly with their particular game of choice. They'll say things like World of Warcraft is the best, or RuneScape is the best, or Final Fantasy 14 is the best. And not only is it the best, it is who I am as a person. I am a World of Warcraft player. I am a Final Fantasy 14 player. I am a RuneScape player. And this is my life. And if you say anything to criticize my identity as a World of Warcraft player, or my game, which I base my identity around, then you are anathema. They rage, they go crazy, they start typing like keyboard warriors, and this is what happened, and this is crazy. And it's not only with video games. You see this with things like iPhone and Android. I remember in college, I used an iPhone throughout college, but there was about a semester or so where I wanted to switch, and I switched to Android. And I was dating this girl at the time. She's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "Why are your messages green?" I'm like, "Excuse me?" She says, "Yeah, when I used to text you, the text bubbles were blue. Now they're green." I said, "Yeah, is that a problem?" She says, I can't. You have to go change your phone. I can't associate, we're dating. I can't associate with you if you have green text bubbles." This is crazy. And then, it didn't work out with that girl. And then when I'd start to talk to other girls, I heard other girls say that same thing back then when I was in college. And so people have been associating with all of these stupid products and celebrities. We have the phrase Swifties now for people who like Taylor Swift. These people are so fanatical about Taylor Swift that we had to make a name for them and call them Swifties. And people get this way with sports teams, and people get this way with things like veganism. And it's been a long time coming. We started seeing little inklings of this before the internet. But what happened is, all the people who were super fanatical about this, that, or the other consumer product or thing, who were all separated from each other and had to interact with each other like normal people in the real world, much like the way it is nowadays, today even anyways. When you put them online and you get these really advanced algorithms who are really good at getting all these fanatics together, then, you get this online community phenomena that's been infecting the minds of the youth. And so this is really a big consequence of corporate America and corporatism in America, because in America, we really like to consume product, next iPhone, more food, obesity, more food. And, we're consumers. This is kind of the ethos, the zeitgeist of the American people, for better or for worse. And a lot of this consumption is a product of love for money, especially when it comes to consumer products and technology and, the cars and the watch and the whatever, this sort of stuff. And when you love these things so much, while simultaneously forgetting about God, which we have here in the West. We have forgotten God, or over intellectualized God, and forgotten the mystical aspects, the union, the direct relationship with God as we have in the West. Then the love of money, which the Bible says is the root of all evil, but it's clearly the root of a lot of brain rot too, leads us to propping these things up as false idols, propping up World of Warcraft or iPhones or Taylor Swift or whatever else as a false idol. And so you have noticed that this sort of brain rot has infected our space as well. You will go on Twitter and you will see him on Twitter where this person's whole profile is some pet like theological issue. Like, for example, like Thomism. That's who I am. Who am I? I am a Thomist. I'm Brian the Thomist, Timmy the Thomist. And this is their whole life, and this is their whole persona online, and these are the people they associate with. And they, as Jeem would say, shout out to Jeem. I love Jeem's channel, by the way. If you haven't checked out Jeem, check out Jeem. He's a great channel that covers apologetics, and he talks about some geopolitics and this sort of stuff. And I'll link him in the description. And like he would say, like Jeem would say, you know, people would spend 9 hours a day on Discord doing Discord debates. This is crazy. This is crazy. And you will see like, oh, like a Miaphysite, where like, this is who I am. I'm a Miaphysite. But, you know, your flavor of theological association, while is important, and it's important, that's why I do apologetics on my channel. It's important to know it's true. We're called to be Christians first. We're called to have a personal relationship with God first. That is the root core identity that we're supposed to really live our lives as. And I remember back in my early 20s, there was this dude who, he was older. He was in, I think, his mid 40s, late 40s at the time. I was in my early 20s. And so I looked up to this guy. And he was someone who was doing work for the military, and he spent a lot of time overseas in Afghanistan and all this sort of stuff. And he said something, and it stuck with me. He said, Andrew, what you're fighting for is more important than who you're fighting against. And I feel like this lesson is not a lesson that has been absorbed overall in the online Christian apologetics community, where a lot of these debates have become this like, oh, so-and-so refuted and debunked, and it's this WWE match, and you have Hulk Hogan on one side, and you've got Conor McGregor on the other side, and it's a sports game, or it's the World Soccer Cup or something, World Football Cup if you don't live in America, and it's become sport, it's become entertainment for too many people. And because of the ways that the algorithm works, the people who do the debates, the people who put on the show are incentivized to, you know, present it with like a certain type of thumbnail and present it with a certain type of title, and, you know, give it some entertainment. And remember, back in the day, it was super dry, super formal, super toned down. Now everything's like ramped up to 10, ramped up to 11, because it's entertaining, and entertaining stuff in the cutthroat landscape, the cutthroat competition that exists with these advanced algorithms are almost necessary, unfortunately, to get it out there. This is where we're at. And so I urge you, dear listener, as your paladin of the night, to go outside and touch some grass. And I'm not saying this unironically. Actually, if you go outside, you know, circumstances willing, if you could find some space of solitude where you can sit and be with God in a quiet place and pray, or be in nature and feel the presence of God. And of course, go to church. You know, go to church. Today's Sunday. I went to church earlier this morning. I took communion. I was at liturgy. Go to church at least, you know, if it's feasible, once a week, to liturgy, and partake with that, because that's a real community. There's people there. There's real people there, and you're getting together over, you know, something you all have in common, which is hopefully a love for Jesus, right? And another thing about this online apologetics thing is sometimes what I've noticed is people can use it as a coping mechanism for weak faith. So you want to believe, or you should believe, but sometimes your faith will weaken, and so you kind of will put yourself in a spot where you're constantly consuming, or someone's constantly consuming apologetics and theology and reading theology and listening to theology as this way to constantly fill their mind with ideas about God to try to compensate for a weakened faith or a lack of faith. And this would be equivalent to having a friend, right? Who you think about all the time. You constantly think about this friend. You think about their favorite things, what they like to do, the way they are, their characteristics, their personality. And you're doing this all of the time. And then years and years and years pass by. And you never actually talk to this friend. You never see this friend. You never interact with this friend. And then what ends up happening is they become just a thought to you, just some distant memory, just some idea of what was. The past is kind of a weird concept to begin with, because it almost is an idea. I mean, it's happened, but we can't access it directly. We could only access it through ideas. And so this would be equivalent to doing that. And alternatively, what we'd actually want to do with God is we want to spend time with that friend. If we think about that friend all the time, they become some thought. But if we're actually spending time with them, we're laughing together, we're enjoying ourselves, we're having a good time together, then you're actually in the presence of that friend, and that relationship becomes meaningful. It doesn't become, it's not something you just think about. It's a real thing that you're interacting with. It's a real thing that you're partaking in. And so, to kind of wrap up this video, someone might ask the question, Andrew, Mr. Paladin, why haven't any new Oriental Orthodox apologetics videos come out? Because in truth, some other people on the internet have put out some videos on Oriental Orthodoxy. There was this one lady recently, Sona, who put out this video. And it's like, oh, well, why don't you debunk or refute this or whatever, right? And the answer is because I already did. The videos I've made so far on this topic have been videos that answer the things brought up in these new videos that have come out since then. I've already done it. Go back and look at it. It's there. But if I'm constantly making content on the same topic over and over again, and this sometimes you see this in the apologetic space as well, where it's like the same pet topic, and then it's like 7 zillion videos across like 10 years over the same pet topic over and over again. And they're just saying the same thing, maybe rephrased or in different ways each time. Why? Is my goal to waste your time? I don't want to waste your time. My goal is not to waste your time, to keep you watching, to get watch time. The goal here is to create a situation where you can find for certain what is true. And as Paul says in the epistles, defend your faith when you are called to do so.